Glad that you've come out tonight to hear our guests tonight. I don't know why, but I want to call you Pastor. Pastor Richard. I guess I'm so used to introducing people. Pastor this person, Pastor that person. Richard is a minister in his own right. He is a member of the Hellfighters here in Concord. And they do a tremendous ministry up on Church Street. It was in downtown Concord. Now it's a little further uptown in Concord, but it's probably a little more centrally located.
Yes, sir.
And so they minister to the homeless population here in Concord, Cabarrus County. And he has a wonderful testimony of how God moved in his life and gave him victory over cancer. So, Richard, why don't you come and share with us what the Lord put on your heart tonight?
Thank you.
I still want that. Good evening. How are you this evening, everybody?
Good.
I don't know. I mean, everybody's heard this. Pastor Mary, Karen, have heard this before. I don't consider this. Actually, everybody says it's a testimony. I don't consider it a testimony. It is a story. I don't consider it a journey. It is an adventure. As I go through, you learn of this adventure, and I look at it that way. It's the only way I can look at it. And what I would recommend, I mean, I'm going to be honest, truthful. I'm transparent. I would have tissues. One is if you're going to cry. Two, if you're going to sit there and laugh. Which is what I want. I want people laughing, because I got stories that will make people laugh. I got stories that will make you cry, and it's an interesting adventure. I'm just start out really quick. I am 2 years, 3 months cancer free. December 1st, 2021. I've been cancer free since December 1st. I was diagnosed in July 24th, 2020, with colorectal cancer. It was one of those things that was found out through a pre-exam. Actually, it was a Colacute box that Colacute runs around. And I just did it, and they said, there's something in you, you have to get a colonoscopy. And I'm like, it's a false positive. I kept saying it's a false positive. I even told my wife that, and I know my wife isn't here tonight because my wife and daughter are doing devotional with the Hellfighters. So, but I'm like, it's just a false positive. So I make an appointment Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock. I'm like, just gonna go in, have this done. Did what they call the prep, drinking the stuff, and it's not as bad as it used to be. It's really not bad now, but went through that and had a colonoscopy. At that time, we were in the middle of COVID, so we could only have one person in with us. And my wife happened to be able to come in. No, she wasn't in the room with me. She was in the waiting area, but when they told us what was going on, she was able to come in. And it was an hour that I was in there. And she came in, we were sitting there, I'm laying down afterwards and just relaxing. Like I said, I had a good hour's sleep. And the doctor comes in, and he looks at me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he says, you got cancer. And I'm like, why? But instead of rolling over and saying, God, why me? Why are you punishing me? What did I do? I turned around and said, okay, I got it. What do you want me to do with it? Immediately I heard, I want you to be humble, I want you to be faithful, and I want you to be obedient, and I'll take care of it. And I said, this piece of cake. And I did. And the next week was a whirlwind of tests. I had a CT scan, blood tests. They were drawing blood to find out if it was anywhere else in my body. What else was there? There was just meeting with my cancer doc at that time, because I now have a cancer team. And they met with all them, and they kept telling me, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen. And they gave me a couple of weeks, and then I started what they call chemotherapy and radiation the end of August. And I was doing radiation 5 days a week. I was doing chemo every 14 days. And I get a week off and had to do chemo again. And chemo was just taking pills, and that's all it was. And they made the comment that you're going to feel sick, you're going to lose, I have no hair, but you're going to lose your hair. See, told you, it's funny. You're going to lose your hair, you're going to lose, you're going to get sick. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready for it. And the side effect of the chemo was that you get what they call dry skin. That was the only side effect I got. I got dry skin. But in all that time, God kept saying, I've got this. I'm going to take care of it. You continue to do what you're doing, I'll take care of it. And during that time, Teresa, my wife and our daughter, we kept it close to our heart. We didn't say nothing to many people except our families. And, we kept it really close. And my one sister was still, because I'm from Syracuse, New York, my one sister still, as soon as I told her, the first words out of her mouth was, I'm coming down there. Why? What are you going to do? But she's a caregiver. And I'm like, you stay up there, we're fine. And, like I said, we kept going through, the tests and things like that. I did the radiation. Thank you. I think I'm sweating more than anything else, but I did the radiation, and I did, the chemo, and the end of September is when I finished. And they said, we're going to give you 4 weeks off. So I had 4 weeks off, end of October. I went in for an MRI, an MRI and another full body scan. And they still found the cancer was right. What they were telling me was what they call the intersection of the colon cancer, right at the intersection. And their plan was, during that time telling me, was that they're going to have an operation and they're going to take it out. And I'm like, okay, we'll do this. We'll have the operation, we'll take it out, and we'll see where we go from there. All the time, I never lost my faith. I continued to have my faith, and I became even closer to God during that time, letting Him know that I'm there, I'm letting you handle it. And sometimes I hear people, as I talk to people during that time, telling them where I was going through, first word they kept saying is, I'm sorry. I'm like, why are you sorry? You didn't give me this disease. I've got a disease, you didn't give it to me. Why are you sorry? But again, at that point I started making fun of it. I said, if we're going to have this surgery, we're going to get it out, I'm going to go back to normal, what we consider to be normal. And what happened was, I did, the week of Thanksgiving, we had off and we celebrated with our families and stuff. And December 1st is when my surgeon said we're gonna go in and have surgery. I'm okay, we go in. My wife again was able to sit in the room for a little while before she had to go in the waiting room and wait for me to go to the surgery center. And during that time, I was supposed to be there. I went in at 7 o'clock, and I'm giving you numbers because it's stamped in your brain. And 7 o'clock in the morning, I went in and they said I'll be in surgery for about 5 hours. And around, I should have been out at noon. My wife said 1 o'clock she had not heard. At noon she had not heard anything. 1 o'clock she had not. They finally told her he's out of surgery. He's in recovery. He's going to be going up to his room shortly. You go with him. She was worried for that hour. She didn't know what was going on. And we get up to the room, of course. Whenever they ask me, "Were you allergic to?" Anesthesia's one. I'm not a good patient when it comes to surgeries. I'm very aggressive at that point, coming out. And so they got me into my room, and of course we're sitting there and went through what we went through, and I realized that I had staples in me, and the doctor had said they were going to do they were going to put a robot in and take it out, but I had staples in me. I'm like, okay, something else. And then, of course, they give you all the equipment to be able to handle the cancer during that time, or be able to handle your surgery. And I had, as the pastor knows about, I had what they call port. They put a port in, and then I had what they call a bag. And the whole time I was there, this book was with me. My Bible was with me. It was open the whole time I was in the hospital. And the doctor said to me, he goes, "You're going to be here 4 days." And I'm like, okay, so 4 days. Actually, I was born December 4th. I was going to be out on my birthday. I was going to go home on my birthday. I'm like, this is great. And the third day he comes in, he goes, "Well, you're not going home." I said, "What do you mean I'm not going home?" Because we're going to hold you for a little while longer. Okay. Never told me what was going on. I still relied on my faith. I still relied on being humble, being obedient. And is that during that time, it was interesting. People were coming into my room. I had round-the-clock nurses. I had round-the-clock caregivers. But they weren't coming in to take care of me. They were coming in to listen to me. They were coming in to encourage me. But I was encouraging them at the same time. I would walk around the hospital, because I was on the second floor. I walk around the hospital every few hours, and I would catch up with some of the patients. But I also would actually pick on the nurses, and say hi to them. And, like I said, I was making a big joke of the whole thing. And that Saturday morning, another doctor came in, and he says, "I had to assist your doctor." I'm like, "Why?" I didn't ask why. I said, "Okay." He goes, "You notice we had to go inside instead of, through the robot." He says, "It was too sticky, we couldn't get out with the robot, so we had to cut open and go in and grab it." And we did. And I said, "Okay." And I said, "God had it." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, God actually guided our hands to do what we needed to do. Well, that Sunday, my doctor came, and he told me, we started talking, and he goes, "You met the other surgeon?" I said, "Yes." And he looks at me and goes, "Mr. Bellucci," he goes, "I don't sweat." He goes, "I was sweating." I said, "Why?" I said, "God had it. He told me he had it. I'm not worried about it." He goes, "When you were on the table," he goes, "we opened you up and started taking the cancer out. Your kidneys decided they were going to stop." So I was literally going into kidney failure at the same time. But I told him, "So why were you worried? God had it. He told me he had it, so I didn't worry about it." I spent another few days in the hospital again, still talking to caregivers, still talking to people, and not just testifying, but ministering to people about my faith and fear, and my favorite scripture, which I talk about, which is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through God, through Jesus who strengthens me. I hate to say I watch a lot of TV, but then, rather than watch a lot of TV, but still, when I got out the night, I came home, and they let me rehab for that month, the month of December, which was Christmas. And after a couple of days, I actually got out of the house, and I was going out to the stores and things, and I was witnessing to people. But I wasn't witnessing as in, "I see you, how are you today? It's nice to see you, you look like you're troubled." No, I was hearing through, the Lord was telling me, that person needs to talk to you. Make eye contact, they need to talk to you. And I talked to quite a few people during that time, and I was letting, they were telling me their stories. I was telling them what I was going through. And like I said, they were saying they were sorry. I'm like, "I'm sorry. It's not your fault. It's nobody's fault. It is a fact of life, but it's how you handle it." And as I said, I was making fun of it. I kept saying everything I had was, I called it rental equipment. I called the port rental equipment. I called the colostomy bag rental equipment. It was all rental equipment, because I'm not going to have it all my life. It's going to be gone. I knew what the prognosis was. I knew what God had told me, and I believed everything. So we started, end of December, beginning of January, I started chemotherapy, which was straight chemotherapy. And Pastor, and as I say, everybody knows this, I had, every 3 weeks I got not radiation, but I had port, so I had radiation put in my port, or chemo put in my port. And then I was also still taking chemo pills. So every 3 weeks, it was hard because what I was getting in the port was the side effect was that anything I touched in the middle of winter, even on top of it, anything I touched that was metal, it was like frostbite. So I would touch something that was like frostbite, and I'm like pulling away. And I actually had to take just a drink. I have a drink now, which is behind me, it has ice in it, but I had to put drinks in the microwave to heat them up. I cannot drink a cold drink because it was like having razor blade. That was just a side effect of the port. But that was only lasted for like a week. And the doctor told me, I misheard the doctor. My cancer doctor told me, he goes, 6 months. I thought he said 6 treatments. So we're going on to 6 treatments. I said, I'm done, right? He goes, no, you've got 2 more treatments to go. I said, you're serious? He goes, yes. Because I told you 6 months, which was 8 treatments. I go, okay. I said, if I stop now, what happens? He goes, it could come back. I prayed about it. And the doctor said, and Jesus said, keep doing it, keep following, because I got this. And I did the full 6 months. But during the 6 months, I went back to work, not just for the school district, because I work for Charlotte Mecklenburg schools, but I also work for a major hotel down in the city of Charlotte. So I was working both my jobs. But as I was still testifying to people at both positions. I was testifying to people at Charlotte Mecklenburg schools where I was, and also testifying at the hotel. People would come in front of me, and I know I looked at Mary when I said this, but the Lord would tell me, you need to talk to them. You need to let them know what's going on. And I got a couple of little stories. One part, we're all teachers where I am, what you call a teacher assistant. She made a comment. The Lord told me, he goes, you need to talk to her. I'm like, okay, I'm all for it. And I said, what's going on? And she told me her son had leukemia, stage 2 leukemia. I said, okay. And she started talking to me, and I said, I'm going to tell you right now. Like I said, you believe, you're a believer, you're a Christian, you believe, you have faith in God. I said, God told me, he's got it. He's going to take it away. And she looked at me like, where do you come up with this? That's what God just told me that. And she just buried her head in her chest and cried. And I caught up with her 2 weeks afterwards. And we were talking. I said, so how's your son doing? She goes, I don't know what you said. I said, what do you mean? She goes, his tumor has shrank. He no longer has to take all the medications. He's coming back. And you're talking to a 29-year-old child. And I told her, I told you. I said, you got to have faith. You got to be humble. You got to be faithful. You got to be obedient. I said, that's all I'm asking you to do. I said, that's all he asked me to do. So things had turned around for her. I still had contact with her. Her son's still doing pretty good. And I had a lady at the hotel one night. And of course I worked what they call graveyard shift. And she came in and she was a little distraught. I could tell she was distraught. But the Lord again told me, you need to talk to her. I said, okay. I'm warning you to talk to her. What do you want me to tell her? He goes, listen, and I'll tell you. Sure enough, we started talking back and forth, and I made the comment that, about my situation. And she looked at me. And I told her just exactly what I'm telling you, what the Lord has told me. To be faithful, humble, and obedient. And I'll take care of it. And she burst out in tears. And I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry, if I offended you, I'm sorry. She goes, no. She goes, you're what I needed to hear. So, what had happened is her daughter, at 7 years old, had a stroke. And she lost faith. And by what I said, you looked at me. But I understood at that time that the Lord was talking to me. So, as I said, I'm going to go back to this, but we went through, like I said, I went through chemotherapy, talking to people that I would just talk to. Again, as I was telling people it was an adventure. I made jokes of it, even in school, working with the kids. I made jokes of it. My partners who worked with me were very protective of me because they didn't want me to get hurt again. I said, I'm not going to get hurt. Don't worry about it. God's got it. I said, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm fine. I mean, I became a little more cautious where, I had to make sure I didn't get scratched or bleed or anything, but I said, God's got it. And I've worked on my faith. And come the end of the year, we finished school, and I finished off of my chemo. June 8th was my last chemo treatment. Yeah, they had made a reservation. They had made a date to go ahead and reconnect my colon and let me become what I consider a real boy again, or normal. See, I told you. What did I tell you about Disney? I told you about Disney. Pinocchio, a real boy. A real boy of colon, or normal, what you consider normal. And the doctor made the decision. I'm still seeing my surgeon, and he said, we're going to do it July 13th. I said, okay. And at that time, July 13th, 2000, we were coming out of the pandemic, and we were starting to do a little more being out there and reaching out. So my wife was blessed to be able to sit in the room with the waiting room with me. And the doctor comes, my surgeon comes in knowing what we went through the first time. And he said, Mr. Bellucci, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, reverse everything. I said, well, you're taking out the cord too, right? He goes, you don't want it? I said, no, I don't want it. I told you it was all. I said, Doc, this is all this rental equipment. You can have it back. I will never have it again. And he goes, I could see the smile underneath his mask. And my wife was just shaking her head like, you're just not right. But she saw where I was thinking. And I ended up, we ended up going in July 13th. I had they reversed everything. And I woke up, they did something so I didn't wake up as a person who was possessed. I woke up just like I had been sleeping. And what it was, I was with Elliot. But I woke up and the nurses said, well, you're going to go back, you're going to go up to your room. And I asked personally to be put on the same floor I was put at when I had my surgery the first time. And they said, yes, you will be put right where you want, because we're seeing something we never seen, is that I was beating it, but I was helping people at the same time. So they put me upstairs, and if you know hospital rooms, they're not the biggest ones. Somehow I lucked out. I got what they call a suite. I had a room, and the bathroom had to be 20 feet from where I was, from my bed. And I'm like, okay. So my wife spent the day with me, the 13th. That day, I went back to my room, and within 2 hours, I was walking around the hospital. My wife and I would walk around the hospital. And I was talking to the nurses again. Some of them remembered who I was. Talking to nurses, talking to caregivers, walking around, just being normal. And I was only going to be there 3 days this time, which I knew I was only going to be there 3 days because of the way I felt. And they would, again, I had caregivers and nurses coming in 24 hours, checking on me and giving me, shots and things like that. But still, I was still ministering to them. I was still telling them about where I've been, what I've seen, what I've heard, how God has done a lot of things for us. And He blessed us all the way around. And the night before I was supposed to leave, the nurses, I said, well, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. And I said, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Right? And he goes, well, not really. What do you mean, not really? Now, the nurses were playing with me. You're staying around because we need you. I said, no, I'm out. I'm going home. So that night, I was literally catching up a lot of sleep during that day. And that night I got up and it was 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I was bored. And I got up, I walked out of my room, and one of the nurses looks at me and she goes, Mr. Bellucci, where are you going? She thought I was sleepwalking. She goes, where are you going? I said, I'm going to terrorize the villagers, just leave me alone. But what it was, I was walking around the hospital one last time to make sure that, things were, there was, anybody was there, I was there for them. And the next morning they came in, my blood pressure, I was perfectly fine. So I got released, went home, rehabbed for 2 weeks at home, because I had what they call an open wound. They didn't close it, I had an open wound. Teresa, my wife, had to take care of me. I learned again, like a toddler, I had to go to the bathroom. Personally, I had to learn how to do it again. So it was an interesting 2 weeks, but then I went back to work. I went back to work at the hotel the end of July, and then I went back to school in August. And of course, I was there, 2021. Went back to the school I was working at, which is a special needs school. And I enjoyed it. We had fun. And it was interesting because one day I was walking around, my shoes came untied. I'm on my knees tying my shoes, and like 5 people rush over to me. Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm just tying my shoes. And they thought something had happened. I wanted to say I'm sitting here praying, but I'm leaving that one alone. But people heard my story during that time, and I told them my story, told them my adventures, told them what I was going through. And again, I was still hearing people saying their story, but I was hearing people telling me their stories of a relative who had cancer, or who has cancer, or a family member, or themselves, or what they went through, or not even the cancer part of, I had a heart attack, or I've got heart palpitations, and I had a stroke. I heard all that, but I kept telling them, God's got it. As long as you're faithful, you're humble, and you're obedient, God will take care of it. I said, you have to believe. And that's one thing I never lost. I never lost it, and I still haven't lost it. But it never goes away. You stay with it the whole time. And I've been blessed in more ways than one. During the time that I was doing my second round of chemo, my wife, in her infinite wisdom, because I went back to work, both jobs, she goes, you're fighting a disease? And I said, yes, I do. I said, but God's got it. Haven't you heard that yet? I said, I'm being faithful, I'm being obedient, I'm being humble. He's got it. Why are you worried? But we had lost our father-in-law 10 years ago to colon cancer. So she was worried about me, and I'm like, don't worry about it. I got this. We're fine. We'll get through it. But we were blessed in more ways than one, because, as Pastor had said, the Hellfighters had come to our church, and they were talking to me, the head of it, Henry Lee's our president, and he said, I need somebody. I said, you need somebody for what? He goes, I need you on the board of the Hellfighters. I said, okay. He goes, you have great testimony, great attitude, great spirit. I'm also what they call a credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor. He goes, I need somebody like you. So I was accepted into their board. And I did. I went there. I took it. I said, yes. I prayed about it. And God said, yeah, go. That's where you need to be. Because we have been doing the mission work for 4 years prior to that. My daughter reminds me how long we've been doing it. It was 6 years as of Christmas, last Christmas. But she, and he goes, I said, okay. So I became part of the board. And in the process after that, in July of, keep going back, I'm jumping around a little bit, I shouldn't be, but I went back to school, started working at school. I was given promotion at the hotel. I'm now what they consider the general manager at night. I'm responsible for a 250-room hotel at night as a supervisor. My boss came and he says, I want you to do it. And it was just being faithful, obedient, and humble. God opened the doors. Even during the time that I was not able to work, God kept opening the doors and making sure that we had food, had shelter, had gas to get what we needed to get, and do what we needed to do. And that was the thing. As I said, even I was home for a little while. This my book, my Bible. I read it continuously. If you look at it, I got all these little markers of scriptures that I was following. And I wouldn't pick just anything. I would just open it wherever it opened. That's where God wanted me to read and tell what was going on. And things have changed a lot for me in the last time. I'm still telling people my story. I think right now, when it comes to churches, I've told it probably about 6 times. I've told my story 6 times. But I still tell people as I talk to them. In fact, last night, during the night I did, I told a couple we were talking. And I said, I'm someplace where I wasn't 2 years ago. And they started talking, and I told them, I said, if it wasn't for the grace of God, I wouldn't be right here. And they were interested in the story. And they listened. But as things have progressed, for me, I was working at a school, it's called Metro School in Charlotte. I couldn't go to school, so working with special needs children. Last April, I was offered a position to work for the district, and it's what they call a district behavior support technician, or what's called BST, which means I go into the schools now and work with the children who have behaviors. And so that has been my dream job. I've been looking to get that job for so long, and the Lord opened that door. And I got a great supervisor, and she's a great person. I got a great team that we work with. And I've just recently, I'm still stuck on one shift, but because of our staffing, but I just recently have been moved up to what they call the assistant front end manager at my hotel, which means I'll be changing my shift from a midnight position to an evening weekend position.
Wow.
My boss approached me about taking that. He would love to have me full time, but there's reasons why at this point. But it's like I said, God is opening the doors as being, as I say, being humble, being faithful, being obedient. Like I said, there's a lot of fear also, and God just tells you in the Bible, don't fear. Don't fear, for I am here. I will take care of it. And there's one scripture I was going to actually bring out. It's a parable, and it'll be towards the end here, but it's a parable, and you've heard this parable you've heard this parable of Jesus. He's asleep in the bow of the boat. And there's rough waters and the wind, and all the disciples are worried about drowning. And here's a gentleman still sleeping. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm picturing this whole thing. I'm picturing these guys panicking, and what are we going to do? We're going to die. And he's down there sleeping. He doesn't think anything about this. And we're going to die. And what is going on? And they go downstairs, and they're down in the bow of the boat, and they're like, Lord, we're going through rough seas. We're going to die. Don't you care? And I can just envision, the Lord waking up and rubbing his eyes, and probably back in his mind is, you guys just still haven't caught on yet. But rubbing his hair, rubbing his eyes, fixing his hair, coming out of the bow of the boat, looking at the seas, and telling them, be calm. And what happens? The sea's calm. And he looks at everybody and he says, ye have little faith. And he probably went back to sleep. But it just shows that you have to have faith in what the Lord is doing, and what he is doing, what he will do. And as Pastor had said, what he's done in the past, what he's doing in the present, what he will do in the future. I would love to know what he's going to do in the future, but in the second part, I really don't want to know what he's doing in the future, because I'm surprised and enjoying what he's bringing to us and what he's bringing to our lives. Like I said, I just recommend, I don't recommend, I tell people, be faithful, be humble, be obedient. just the three things, that's it. I know a lot of people are suffering, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm still dealing with some things with my my cancer. I have another, come July, they say all the, what you call it, should be out. All my chemo should be out of me. So at that time, I should not have any chemo in me, but I don't know. But I'm still learning. And I'm still being faithful. I'm still reading. As I read the Bible, it's funny, as I read the Bible every day, you're learning something new. It's like you watch a movie. You learn something new every time you watch it. I'm learning something new every time I read the Bible and the interpretations. And as I said, I just want everybody just to follow that, and don't be afraid. Don't ever be afraid. It's, you know, he's bigger than what this whole world is giving us right now. You know, it's not about money. It's not about how big, you know, how much you have. It's what you have and the faith you have and what He can do for you. And I can't say enough about it. Like I said, I know my wife and daughter aren't here because they're doing something else, but being with the Hellfighters, the motorcycle mission group, we do a lot for, I call them less fortunate. We do a lot for less fortunate, and they love it. And I consider them family, because they're our family, and we go down and see them, you know, 3 times a week. So, I'm going to really end it right here. And I thank you very much for letting me share this story, or this, as I consider this, you know, testimony, but my story, my journey, an adventure. And I really do appreciate it. Like I said, I'm right behind everything that I read here.
Would you pray for us?
Oh, okay. Dear Lord, I'm bringing you here today, and thank you for the words of wisdom you've given me, because I know that it's you who's speaking, not me. What you're telling everybody is what I'm telling everybody is what you want them to hear. Dear Lord, I just pray for everybody here today. I know there's afflictions going on, not just in this room, but also outside of this room, as it's being televised or being shown. I just ask that you right now come down and put a hedge of protection around everybody, and hopefully that they too will find solace in your hands, and that you will protect them, and as you said you would protect them when you went to the cross. Dear Lord, I just ask you right now to give us grace and comfort as we go through these next times and in the future. And dear Lord, I thank you very much personally for what I've gone through and the opportunity to share what you've taught me with others, and that I can be what I call a beacon for you. And dear Lord, I just ask you right now to be with us, give us grace, in His holy name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.